Hello, everybody. First of all, thank you to all of you for being here. I know that you are exhausted after 3 days of interesting conference and exhibition, but I think this panel deserves all of your attention. Let me introduce myself. I'm Eva Bufi, Executive Director of PPP for Cities. It's a center led by ESA Business School and the United Nations that has the objective of deliver best practices and spread knowledge and business in smart cities and sustainable cities all around the world. And in this session, as you can see from the title, we want to raise some experience and talk about the need of cooperation between all the actors working at the local level, private sector, public authorities, and citizens. And for this, we have a very high-level experts coming here from the public and the private sector with a very interesting experience that we share with you. First of all, we will start with Ms. Noriko Adachi, Director for National Strategic Special Zone Coordination inside the Office of the Governor for Policy Planning of the Tokyo Metropolitan Government. After holding different positions in the areas of environment, sewerage, and traffic, she has been working since 2013 to attract foreign companies to Tokyo's special economic zones. Thank you for being here. After her, we will have Mr. Johannes Schmidt, CEO of Project and Structured Finance Energy Management, Mobility and Industries at Siemens Financial Services in Germany. His deep experience in financing solutions range from power generation and intelligent city infrastructure to large-scale industrial appliances. After him, Mr. Bernard Ewah, Head of E-Government and IT Infrastructure Security Services at the National Information Technology Development Agency in Nigeria. NITA, the Nigerian agency, is responsible for steering the development and application for of ICT as driver for national growth. Bernard provides leadership through multi-stakeholder engagement and partnerships and across all tiers of governments in the country. It's Mr. Arvind Satyam, Managing Director of Business Development at Cisco Systems. Arvind leads business development globally for Cisco's Smart and Connected Communities initiative. Under his leadership, team has executed a number of iconic projects globally, as well as other strategic partnerships, joint venture, and investment. And last but not least, Mr. Sijit Hadi Prajoda is Alien and Acquisitions Integration Engine Leader at the Department of Synergy of PT Telkom in Indonesia. He's an enterprise solution architect with broad experience working in some projects in Telecom. His experience is related to strategic planning, formulation, and analysis, as well as system analysis and software engineering areas. Thanks of all of you for being here and letting us learn of your experiences. So, ladies first, please. Here you have this for moving the presentation. You can go to talk from there. Maybe for going faster, maybe we are going to do all the presentations one after the other, and then open the discussion to the public. We would like to listen to your opinion and to listen to your questions for the speakers. So I encourage you to ask after all of the presentations.
Okay. So. Good afternoon, everyone. Within the Tokyo Metropolitan Government, I serve as Governor as the Director for National Strategic Special Zone Coordination. Our job is to encourage excellent global companies to set up operations in Tokyo. We believe smart city should be also sustainable city from the an economic perspective. Today, I'd like to explain our initiatives to attract foreign companies as one of our growth strategy from the general perspective of the 4Ps. First, let me speak about the positioning of attracting foreign companies within our city's policy. At the end of last year, the Tokyo Metropolitan Government formulated Creating the Future, the long-term vision for Tokyo. This shows the rollout of policies to achieve our vision for Tokyo in 10 years, including the Tokyo Olympic and Paralympic Games, which will be held on 2020. Therefore, our target is to make Tokyo the world's best city. Strategy 6 calls for transforming Tokyo into a global city that can lead the world. We are working aggressively to attract foreign companies to Tokyo. We have been putting a lot of effort into attracting foreign companies to Tokyo since 2013. Taking in consideration for future economic development, we are focusing especially R&D or regional headquarters basis establishment because they are high value-added companies. As a result, we successfully encouraged 52 foreign companies, including European companies. These companies mainly belong to the IT, medical, and environment industries, and about 90% of them are setting up R&D centers. From now on, I will explain attractiveness of Tokyo for foreign companies and how we have implemented from the 4Ps vision. Why have these companies selected Tokyo as the hub of their Asian operations? There are 5 basic reasons. Tokyo is a huge and new market, a cutting-edge metropolis, a stable business environment, a premier living environment, and Tokyo offers strong policies and support. Let's look at each reason. Reason number 1, huge and new market. Tokyo is the largest metropolitan area in the world with a population of 36.5 million people. This is expected to grow further to 37.1 million by 2025, according to a United Nations research. The area will retain the highest population density among major cities in the world for the foreseeable future. This means companies will benefit from direct access to huge markets of business customers and consumers over the very long term. In terms of market size, the IT and electronics market was worth 108.1 billion euro. Healthcare was 420 billion euro, and the environment market was 691.1 billion euro, according to market research conducted a few years ago. Tokyo also is home to many emerging markets which several European companies are already tapping into. First, seniors. Tokyo's aging population now represents a huge healthcare market. This has attracted European companies such as Merck Serono, a major biopharmaceutical company. Renewable energy. Japanese policies such as electric power deregulation are promoting solar and wind power. For instance, Siemens, a major renewable energy company. Cloud. Japanese companies are rapidly adopting application cloud services, including those offered by T-Systems Japan, which belongs to Deutsche Telekom. Social media and social gaming are extremely popular in Japan. Among the European companies doing well in this market is Ewah, a major social game developer. Reason number 2, cutting-edge metropolis. Tokyo is on the global cutting edge in terms of trends, innovation, and quality. Trends. Tokyo is a trendsetter for the greater Asian markets. What sells in Japan sells in Asia, and it all begins in Tokyo. Take fashion, for example. Two major fashion shows, Tokyo Girls Collection and Tokyo Runway, are established starting points for Asian fashion. Innovation. Tokyo is an endless stage for new technologies and products developed by companies and universities too. Tokyo's workforce offers tremendous technological know-how and other advanced skills. For example, a venture with the University of Tokyo has developed a food product from a microorganism called Euglena. The product is now sold in Japanese convenience stores nationwide. Quality. Consumers in Tokyo demand world-class quality. Companies that meet the highest requirements of Tokyo's market and succeed, and then regarded highly by other Asian markets. Take Starbucks, for example. This global coffee franchise chose Tokyo and Japan to be its launch market in Asia, which paves the way for its eventual penetration into other Asian markets. Reason number 3, stable business environment. Business success depends on sales, profitability, and market stability. In terms of stability, perhaps no metropolitan area can match Tokyo for low business risk. In terms of international rankings, Japan and Tokyo offer a very stable socio-economic environment, including high-level transparency and rule of law. Japan constantly ranks near the top, both in Asia and worldwide. Likewise, Japan and Tokyo rank among the leaders in protecting intellectual property rights. Reason number 4, premier living environment. Employees moving from foreign countries to Tokyo are very lucky because they get to living in one of the best urban environments in Asia, if not the world. Tokyo is the safest major city in Asia, according to the Economist Global Peace Index. Tokyo also has the cleanest air among the major cities of Asia. And finally, Tokyo offers a rich mixture of city life and cultures as the economic, political, and cultural capital of Japan. You can enjoy diverse shopping experiences, choose from thousands and thousands of restaurants, and enjoy a wide array of sports, art, and music. Reason number 5, Tokyo offers strong policies and support. Tokyo is advancing various efforts with the aim to become the most business-friendly city in the world. Diverse support is offered to global companies that set up business in Tokyo. In particular, the Japanese government authorized the establishment of the special zone for Asian headquarters, which encompasses Tokyo's major major commercial centers. Companies choosing to locate their operations in the zone are entitled to many forms of support and incentives. These include tax deductions, a subsidy program, free management consulting services, introduction to office space that can be rented at half the regular rate for up to 1 year, and various business and living support. The Tokyo One-Stop Business Establishment Center unifies the procedures that foreign companies and startups need to complete to establish a business. For example, company registration, taxes, social security, and so on. On the same floor as the Tokyo One-Stop Business Establishment Center is the Tokyo Employment Consultation Center. At this center, a lawyer provides free consultations on Japanese employment practices, which are often difficult for foreign companies to understand. The Business Development Center Tokyo is another facility located on the same floor. At this floor, bilingual staff help foreign companies planning to come to Tokyo in finding business partners and provide consultations on life in Tokyo. Finally, with regard to our program to attract foreign companies, the notable points of this project from the perspective of the 4 Ps are as follows. The first point of this project was that the Tokyo Metropolitan government looked beyond its own walls to enlist second-to-none expertise in international situations and diverse industries and top-notch support for foreign expansion and other business strategies. Foreign companies were attracted to Tokyo by enlisting private specialist companies to provide foreign companies with support in order to encourage them to make the decision for a market expansion and investment. These measures have lifted Tokyo out of the contest with other international cities to provide the biggest subsidies or the biggest tax breaks, allowing us to successfully pursue a different game plan in the global arena. Next, although this is an outsourcing of the work of a local government, this project is unique in using this means of large-scale outsourcing to have a new program ready to go in a very short period of time. Another notable point is that in drafting contracting specifications, we took the approach of designating not what should be done, but what we wanted to accomplish. Thus, this was a broadly diverse, comprehensive private sector outsourcing project in which the contractors decide how they will reach their goals. Finally, this project adapted performance-based contracting from the perspective of incentive, raising motivation to achieve results, and accountability. Tokyo is a great potential market and gateway to Asia for many foreign companies. As we prepare for the Tokyo 2020 Olympic and Paralympic Games, Tokyo is full of business opportunities for foreign companies as well. We shall implement to attract foreign companies with private sectors to make Tokyo a more sustainable city. Thank you so much for your attention.
I think you have this. You have here the pointer.
Thank you. Hello, good afternoon. My name is Johannes Schmidt. I work for Siemens, a company which is started in Germany but at home in the world, and it's an engineering company. So I will mainly try to speak about this from an angle of a private sector company, from experiences we've made, and from lessons or recommendations we might have for others who are pursuing these projects. We've heard that cities are growing in population, and certainly cities are also growing in their energy consumption, in their transport requirements, and in their healthcare requirements. And this is very important for this to be done efficiently, being part of an engineering company, while from the finance side, we try to define efficiency by the opposite of waste. We try to take waste out of existing projects, just things that aren't needed. How can we produce more with less? Is kind of what drives us and what drives the setup of the cities and their needs. Mature cities need to upgrade their existing infrastructure. High growth cities in Asia need to build entirely new infrastructure. And this is where we believe partnerships do make sense. Siemens does have a wide variety of experiences from various countries, but we encourage project proponents to also exchange views amongst themselves. One city learning from the other, one country learning from the other really makes sense. And the partnership should really extend also to the sharing of risk. How does the private sector get involved with these kinds of projects? Naturally, it's by taking part of the work, but also by taking part of the risk. And there's a number of names: PPP, BOT, design, finance, build, operate, or anything of that nature. The key criterion for us is that through contracts we are changing the burden of proof when you have to and can expect money from a country, a city, or a constituent who is holding a project like that. So this is our definition of what makes a project work. It's the burden of proof is on the private sector. And the benefit for the public sector is that if the private sector doesn't perform, the private sector doesn't get paid. And I think this is a very powerful argument for cities to engage with private sector companies and to really establish a framework which works. This is particularly important. What is smart? Smart is really kind of designing the tender and the project documents in a way that the private sector is held accountable what the private sector should be doing, i.e. delivering projects on time, within budget, and to specifications. And this is a difficult undertaking. It is pretty difficult for a city to really put a good tender out. And if the tender is out, then this is from our perspective when the battle starts and when all communication stops. So I would encourage all proponents for these kinds of projects to really go ahead and exchange information with the private sector, with other cities, with anyone before you go out put a tender, because once the tender is out, the damage is done and cannot be corrected easily later on. Afterwards, if you have selected for a given project, a preferred bidder is selected, you want to convert a bid into contracts. And that's a pretty difficult thing to do. It can take months and years even. And some projects even haven't succeeded in converting from a bid to a contract. In this phase, we spend about 10% of our time on plan A. If everyone does what he or she should, and if everything works to plan, then this is what it should look like. And then the first lawyer comes to the table and say, what if this is late? What if this is more expensive? What if it doesn't work? And these what ifs then eat up 90% of our time, 90% of our budget, and we must understand that parts of the lawyers are paid to ask the question and others are paid to write the answers in the contracts. So they do have a mutual interest of this process not being too quick. So in this phase, I would say complexity and delay or timeline is your enemy or your target. And this is really where a good engagement partnering with the private sector can make good sense. Do not start a project before you haven't allocated all risks. This is almost like you shouldn't drive off with a car if not all the screws are on the tires, because something really bad might happen later on. If these projects come undone, they come undone because of things that we have not talked about early enough and where people have started building or writing contracts before things are finished. And this is a great danger, and this is something that experienced people are happy to talk about before the tender is out. After the tender is out is when confidentiality is in place and nobody talks to nobody else anymore. And that's competition, and that's good. We also engage in this. It doesn't always have to be complex transactions like Thames Link in the UK for 1,000 odd rail cars, 1.7 billion sterling with 36 parties. Contracts were 1,700 odd pages, and they need to fit together. And that's where you have to keep your lawyers under control. But it's also standardization. I'm a little frustrated with the small number of projects that come out of constituencies. Even in Germany, where I come from, you have different documentation in different states for roads. I mean, this is unbelievable, and I do think that a lot can be gained by accepting more standardization also for smaller projects, because there you cannot afford to pay millions to lawyers, then the project would be rendered inefficient anyways. We do participate with equity financings, i.e. we invest equity in these kinds of projects, trains, hospitals, or offshore wind plants, for instance. We do also provide debt alongside banks, so we are lenders in these kinds of projects. And we also do advisory, including insurance advisory for these projects, because Siemens is one of the biggest client of insurance companies around the world through their many projects. The right risk-reward balance and the right partners are the key to success in my mind. And financing cannot turn a bad project into a good one, but it can increase the prospects for success quite markedly, because then you talk about the most important things early enough, and this should help you get to the target. Thank you.
Good afternoon, and thanks for staying with us. Let me open. Okay. Is it on? Where is the computer? Okay. All right, so I'm already there. Okay. Thanks. Don't take what I say. Don't take so much what is there. This is fresh. I'm coming from my head. So my name is Bernard Ewah. I work as head of e-government at the National Information Technology Development Agency in Abuja, Nigeria. My perspective of smart cities and PPPs are influenced by the type of work we do. As a central agency for ICT development in Nigeria, we have two approaches to this concept of smart cities, and particularly the model of PPPs. And that is essentially one, to promote smart city ecosystems by way of special purpose vehicles around the country, working with private sector organizations to develop new projects in areas where we feel sufficiently strong need, to promote economic diversification. Secondly, we try to work with cities across Nigeria to modernize existing infrastructure. In that sense, we work directly with them, for the most part, helping with ideas and project development and working through the life cycles of such projects. As I explained, much of what we do would involve working around strengthening standards and regulations, to promote. Better than this. Okay. All right. Hello? Okay, better? Sure. Okay. So much of what we do involves working with developing standards around the country. For PPP projects, it is essential because each project comes with its unique dynamic. there isn't a silver bullet on how to promote PPPs across different projects. So what we do for the most part is to study the specifics of any project and work to develop provide supporting regulatory frameworks in that regard. We have done a couple of projects around Nigeria. We've worked at, for those of you who know a little bit about Nigeria, we have the knowledge, the Tinapa Knowledge City in Calabar. The Abuja Technology Village is one of those examples of new ecosystems which we are promoting. I'm going to talk a little bit in more detail about the Smart City project in Lagos, and much of the slides here would dwell on that. But why are PPP is relevant in the work we do, in the way we pursue smart city developments in Nigeria? Well, for a long time now, Nigeria has been a single commodity economy, as you probably well know. Oil, accounts for over 90% of our federal revenues, but there is a strong and compelling need for diversification at this point because of dwindling global oil prices. Besides that, it is important for us to utilize smart city initiatives to strengthen governance processes across the three tiers of government. There's a need for us to share costs as well as risk, in a way that entices private sector participants into the public service delivery value chain. So these are some of the reasons why we are very interested in finding opportunities for true PPP models. So the Lagos City project is 100% private sector driven, but what we have done as an institution is to provide the legal support. All right, get government to endorse it, get government to provide incentives to the promoters. This project is located in Lagos. Lagos is the most populous city in Nigeria, probably West Africa. Greater Lagos has about 15 million people. Now, it was important that we played an active role, in the process of bringing this project to the level it is. By the way, the groundbreaking ceremony would take place in January of next year. But as an example of the kind of regulatory mechanisms that went with actualizing this project is the fact that we had to ensure that this project is designated as an export-free zone. That would enable companies and other players in the process realize most of their investments as well as through tax holidays and so on. All right. It's also a way, as I mentioned, to promote economic diversification in Nigeria, which is also a critical reason why we promote PPP models for smart city development. Now, the Lagos project in particular is strategically situated in a way that would provide input in terms of business opportunities to other business verticals. It's located around the seaport, a new seaport, deep seaport in Lagos, in new international airport, and so on. And it's got a couple of major areas which have been deliberately designed to incorporated in the project. One of which is a domain for developing internet businesses, smart cities, telecoms city, which would very much work with a host of telecoms operators in Nigeria, helping them to develop or rather find a space. Basically, my agency is not putting much money in this project beyond providing infrastructure, guidelines for buildings development, and so on. Private organizations like Cisco, when Anand decides to come to Nigeria, would be responsible for putting up the buildings, but using the specifications that have been provided, for the development of this project. That is another example of how cost is being, exposure is being shared among private and public sector firms. So small amenities that are in this project includes 24-hour power supply. This might sound like a flimsy thing to mention, but in Africa, particularly Nigeria, it is a major factor, availability of power, all right? And so you find out that the mere guarantee of 24-hour power supply is a good, even strong business incentive, which will go a long way in promoting or determining the successes of the organizations there, and so on. So investment benefits which we have articulated in this project includes advanced ICT education, single point support for regulatory approvals in government. As you may know, governance, institutional governance capacity is an issue which impacts on small scale enterprises. So bringing this aspect into this project, it was going to go a long way in promoting businesses across, not just those directly related to the Smith project. I'm losing my time. Okay. So I talked about this before, key issues, why we think that, why we're involved in projects like this, to provide legal backing through formal endorsements, approvals. I also talked about regulatory frameworks. It's important to have projects like this backed by legal statutes, so that change in administrations will not impact on their progress, because most times these projects go beyond the political lives of the main promoters. All right. So we talked about finding innovative financial models to support this through government bonds, and so on, which are cheaper ways to access credit than regular banking system, and so on. One of the things too which we are taking very seriously is how to strengthen capacities for governments at city level. Because these projects are directly focused on cities, it's important that we strengthen governance capacity at these levels. And so we're working to use various IoT tools and e-government methodologies to help cities improve their administrative capacities. Once that is done, if we are on the consistent trajectory to achieving that, then we can be sure that more PPP initiatives will be introduced, and so on. And then it is our hope that we would also help to harness social capital, as a probable, let me use that word, as a probable input, to consider PPP models. My idea is that as the internet and other technologies continue to democratize productive means, we will find avenues for which citizens, and other stakeholders in communities will be able to increase their stake in PPP projects. And we do that by way of trying to localize the incentives for technologies within the local economies of these communities, as strong factors for PPP promoters. That was the end. Thank you very much for your time.
Thanks, buddy. Hola. Wait, is this on? Okay, good, much better. How's everyone? Hi, everyone. How's everyone doing? Good. Well, I wanted to hear a noise because You know, when we got told about this panel, we thought, okay, last day, last afternoon, how many people are we going to get? But we're really excited about the attendance. So, Eva, did you promise people that we would give them some financing at the end of this? There was a check, right? Okay. So I'll get started. Here. So I work in a small startup in San Francisco called Cisco. We're not that small, but hopefully you've visited our booth. We've been involved in smart cities for a number of years. I wanted to start with the fun caption. You know, we hear about PPPs all the time. How many of you have actually gone to a PPP party? It doesn't sound like a lot of fun. Can you imagine what the dance floor would be? Everybody would be trying to figure out who's going to go on the dance floor first, right? But it's a funny caption just to illustrate that PPPs have been complex for a number of reasons. In terms of what public sector is willing to do, in terms of what private sector is willing to do, and I think the panelists have spoken about a number of these things. The legal element, the execution piece, the financing piece. So what we want to do is just give you a perspective of how we would go through this. So the first thing I want to do is provide some context. We know that the world is urbanizing. We know that the world is digitizing. In fact, there's 10,000 people that are moving into cities every hour. So that's a city the size of Jakarta that's being created, if you just imagine people moving in, or 6 Dubais. The next thing we know is that demands on infrastructure naturally go up. We need to build a lot of physical infrastructure. But where the world is going, it's not just physical infrastructure, it's digital infrastructure. We also know that citizens are much more comfortable with apps. They're demanding their mayors and city administrations to provide more of a connected environment. And we're seeing a lot of that. IoT tools with e-governance and those elements. So then the question is, why is it that private investment in these projects, why is it that it stayed the same over the last 10 years? So clearly there's something that is out of sync. Is it a lack of money or is it a lack of good projects? And how do we address that? So that's kind of the backdrop of what I want to talk about. You know, I don't want to spend too much time on these slides. These are just preamble to get into the detail, but you might have heard when it comes to Internet of Things, it's a hot topic. There's more and more sensors. Cisco is a company that's grown up connecting the internet. We see the next wave of the internet around connected devices. We predict that there's going to be 50 to 75 billion connected devices by 2020. In fact, we think all these predictions are still too conservative. And we're seeing it everywhere. We're seeing it in connected vehicles, in sensors on our body, sensors inside the home. So the question is, if you're a city leader, how would you manage your cities going forward? We also see the cost of technology, of storage, of networking bandwidth has also gone down. And we've got the ability to take data real time. So more connectivity, cheaper to manage it. So how can we embrace that and manage our cities differently? Next thing we know is we're living in an app economy. We see back in 2007, it's amazing when you look at the statistic that in 2007, the iPhone just came out. Around that time, there are only 3,000 apps. Today, there's 2.6 million apps. So just imagine what we'll end up with by 2020. More connected devices, more of us with mobile phones. So we are absolutely living in this economy. The next thing is our everyday life is getting more and more connected. In fact, I saw this billboard one time which said, "Would you swallow a robot?" which was a little thing that you could swallow to avoid surgery. It sounded scary. I didn't buy the robot, but it gives you an idea of the innovation of technology. Tesla today is as much of a computer as it is a car. When they want to do their next refresh, they do it real time into their cars. Now, if you bring that backdrop into a city, how do cities operate today? A lot of cities are structured and organized in silos. But with internet, with the ability to connect all these silos, we've got the ability to connect and manage city infrastructure differently. We can look at lighting, parking, waste management. We can leverage sensors and connect it over a common infrastructure. And so that's a solution. 5 years ago, and I've been coming to this event from day one, 5 years ago we were trying things. I think one of the things that I'd like to leave with you is it's a lot more real today. There's a lot of examples of these projects deployed, not just as pilots, mass scale deployments. You know, we know of 10,000 plus parking sensor deployments. We're seeing 250,000 light pole RFPs, for instance, in the city of Chicago. So I think the world has absolutely crossed the chasm in terms of thinking about smart technology inside of cities. And this is not a Cisco sales pitch. I just want to, and I guarantee you there's no products on here, but at a simple level, the way we look at this is as many different elements, which are city infrastructure points. We believe if they're connected to a common network over a platform, whether it be wired or wireless, you've got the ability to maximize the benefit through this and manage this infrastructure better. For instance, if there's a camera that's connected to the network, which at one point is looking at a security element, that video feed could also be analyzed to look at movement of people. You could also analyze that video feed to look at parking and loading zone enforcement. So all of a sudden, technology does not become a spend. It could be utilized as a key asset. And in many cases, you could start generating revenue through this. Now, PPPs for core infrastructure have been around for a long time. We've seen bridges, tollways. The two cities that I'm close to, I grew up in Sydney and I live in San Francisco, so I figured I would use those bridges. But the core infrastructure for PPPs, that's something that the world is very comfortable with. What's new is really moving into this digital infrastructure for PPPs. How do you connect 10,000 light poles in a city, which are connected over a sensory network? How do you take data from those light poles? How do you put cameras there or Wi-Fi networks? How do you start creating a digital asset? And what are the new payback models? And so these are the things I think is important, and we've been working with the financial community as well as with governments and an ecosystem to think through what that would look like. An example of this is lighting, and I'll explain why I called out lighting. Lighting is going through a massive transition today from traditional lighting to LEDs. We know there's 4 billion nodes at some point in the outdoor world and indoor that will be transitioned. So we know somebody's going to go there and physically change those light poles. Can you do it in a smarter and a more efficient fashion? And so we've been speaking to a number of investors that are involved in traditional infrastructure, low yield, 20-year type of returns. They invest in tollways, they invest in airports and other things. And they were really excited about lighting because as an energy saving, which is already part of the city's bill, and if you go to smart lighting, you can get up to 60 to 80% savings. And that's compelling. If you go from something that's dumb to something that's much more efficient, you can dramatically change the cost outlay, and that's something that's real, and you can pay back quickly. Now, from an investor's standpoint, it's a real asset, high barriers to entry, and that's something that they're very nervous about, because if it's just an app, you know something else can come in very quickly. But if it's a physical point, you will have that for 20 to 30 years. And then you also know that it's not just about lighting. We're actually talking about leveraging lighting as a platform and using that to connect a number of disparate infrastructure points. So you can use lighting, connect a Wi-Fi point, have video, do analytics, do parking. Now, all of a sudden, that investment can be used across multiple agencies. And in order for this to work, cities have to think about it as a connected fabric, not as individual silos. And this is one of the key things as we talk to mayors and municipalities, and this is one of the things that we look at very quickly. Is this an administration that is structured to do this? Is there political leadership and will to enable this? In terms of benefits, we look at financing a tollway, it's very simple. You cross the Golden Gate Bridge, it costs you $6. And a financier would understand over time, that's what the economic model is, right? You might have that for 50 or 100 years. In the case of financing IoT infrastructure, what are the benefits? You could save money on lighting, but you could generate revenue on things like parking. And so when financial analysts and others look at this equation, they've got to factor these elements back into the model. And we're also talking about providing Wi-Fi, which is something that is a public good, but you can start creating economic models on top of that, location-based services and other elements. The last thing is how Cisco approached the problem of building consortia and building multiple parties together to make this work. Because we know PPPs are difficult. We know that cities want and something that is an executed solution, which has been de-risked. Cisco is not a company that makes lights. We don't make poles. But we also know that we need to bring a number of these elements together. So this is an example of a deal we've recently signed in Kansas City. I like the example because it's designed to do it for Kansas, but it's designed to be exported to 30 to 40 other cities. And that's one of the key problems that I've seen in smart cities. A lot of work to make one thing happen. We're trying to figure out how to do a lot of work to do many cities happen, because then you have a repeatable model, then financiers and others come to the table. Quickly on this, you have an operator who's on the hook for managing infrastructure. You have service providers that are managing technology infrastructure. Then you have financing coming from our capital team, Sprint, but we're also talking to private equity funds that are in the infrastructure space, like Whitehelm, and then traditional banks. And then we've got systems integration of technology, and then startups and vendors that add to this. So we believe it's important to go in with a combination. It's a holistic solution, so it's not a one-vendor sale. And that is something that we want to replicate in terms of technology, financing, and the business elements to many cities. I believe that's the end. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so before I continue, I would like to say thank you to all of you who remain still here, because I spent a lot more than 12 hours flight from Indonesia to Barcelona, so I really appreciate that you are here. Thank you very much. So, yeah, applause for that. Who in here that haven't been know about Indonesia? Who have ever been to Indonesia? Sorry. Thank you. There's so many. Thank you. Because I really hard to let or see whether if people already in Indonesia or not. But if I ask whether if people are already in Bali, they are really recognized. I already in Bali. So Bali is much more famous than Indonesia itself. So anyway, my presentation will be discussing about the PPP models, what we have experienced in Indonesia. And I come from Telkom is a telco company in Indonesia, the largest one. And my role is in acquisition and alliance. So it's my job to see whether there is any partner here in Barcelona who wants to work with us in Indonesia and partnership with us and make an alliance for the future product new services in Indonesia. So this is my office, and well, this is four main key elements that I would like to share you this afternoon. Talk a little bit more about Telkom itself, discuss a bit smart city highlights. What is smart city in our definition? Why we are entering the smart city, because we are a telco company. Why telco doing a smart city? So this is what we are going to explain to you. Some challenge in to build smart city, of course, in the case of smart city in Indonesia, and well, a little bit more details in the PPP models. So this is Telkom nowadays. So we are not just a telco company. We're just not working for the networking, but we're also working for the I and ME. I is for informations, while ME is media and edutainment. So we also working for a ringback-tone. We are running a music. We are running a game services. So almost all of the ICT new digital lifestyle is running by Telkom. So now it's a very huge company. Nowadays, our subscribers is more than 140 million subscribers in Indonesia itself. Total population is 250 millions. So you can imagine it's almost more than half is using our services. Yeah, this is some of our subsidiaries in Indonesia. We also have some international exposures. We developed some subsidiaries in Singapore, Hong Kong, Timor-Leste, Australia. Now we have around 10 companies who is running outside of Indonesia. However, inside Indonesia, we have several subsidiaries. This is just a bigger one. And I will tell you later about how we can run one of our subsidiaries in a smart city. Okay, so this is our company. We are actually a state-owned company. We are a government company. You see, the share is majority owned by the government. But in the government level, we are treated as a private sector. So, well, I think it's okay. We are a private sector anyway. Okay, smart city highlight. We'll show you some of the initiatives driven by the citizens that demanding a sustainable, efficient, safe, secure, and pleasant. This is a dream that citizens really demand today. They want the city to be sustainable. They want the city is a pleasant place to live, pleasant place to work and visit. So this dream is also come from our citizens in Indonesia. But they still facing problems. And this is the most common problems appears in cities in Indonesia. Traffic jam, street markets. Well, you can see that there is people selling something in beside the street. Flood, road quality. Yeah, you can see in the rainy seasons. Security, crime prevention, the governance related to the corruptions, waste management, some education problems, and healthcare. So based on that, I think it's really important for us to have a very deep look and find a good methodology how we can solve all these issues. So we come up with what Frost and Sullivan already mentioned before in his analysis, that the smart city actually can be solved by combining these 9 key elements, key components, including the smart transport, smart building, and so on. So these key components we actually develop intensively now. So therefore, in Telkom, we built a framework like this, which consisting of 3 big pillars. The first pillar is our core business, which is infrastructures. The second pillar is something that we will combine with partners. So smart government, smart citizen, transportation, mostly is an apps, is a device, is solutions, hardware or so on, which is telecoms cannot produce. So therefore, we're looking for partners to support this second pillar. And the third pillar is actually how we help government to educate the citizen, how we telecom help citizens in a city to more internet aware, more educates on the on using a smartphone and so on. So a little bit letting you know about Indonesia. So this is a map of Indonesia and some of the infrastructure we deployed, including the fiber and the submarine sea cable. It's a huge island, but separated by the sea. So it's really, really huge problem for us because besides of deploying infrastructures in the land, we also need to connect to other land using a very high cost infrastructures. So that's the challenge of us. Yeah, this is Bali, Jakarta. Well, mostly of you probably already in Bali before. Okay, so talk about the challenge to build smart city. Okay, I made some research on how the smart city is being developed in some countries or some cities. Well, basically, they took many years 10 years, 11 years, or maybe 20 years. So we made assessment, small assessment in Indonesia, whether if the city is ready to become a smart city. And apparently, 5 of the big cities in Indonesia is on the scale level, meaning that the city is developing a silo applications, silo solutions in different departments. So there is a 2 milestone ahead to become a smart city in the city. So this is some research regarding to time to deploy a smart city in a city. So 10 years, 5 years, 15 years, there's no instantly made a smart city for just a 1 year, 2 year, more than that. So therefore, government requires an amount of budget and also a time. So speaking about PPP, you probably have seen that there are some models here that are already known in the public about the build, own, operate, build, operate, transfer, build, operate, manage as a PPP and open business model. This all PPP model is actually works in a developed country, but probably still in the lack of implementation in Indonesia. So in this animation, you can see that the private sector giving money to the government, and the money itself will be used for developing a railway and so on. So this is only probably happen in developed country. So how about in Indonesia? That's the biggest challenge. So this is an overview to resolve that. So first, we found several models that is not that is comply with the existing regulations. First is a model 1A. This is a model where the government they provide the smart city solution and the services is enjoyed by the citizens. And the government will invest an amount of budget money, which is already prepared a year before. Model 1B, government point a private sector, and they made some managed service with the private sector, and the private sector will deploy solutions for the citizens. It has a pro cons, but another important issue is that it's very long time commitment by the government. So it requires a long time commitment by the government, so that if the governor change or the major change, the program or the project is still continue. Another models is that this point 2A, government actually made a PPP with the private sector. And then the private sector will deploy or invest some services, which will have some benefit for the citizens. But the citizen will pay back an amount of money in term of as a fee, monthly fee. For instance, in Indonesia, for lighting, citizen must pay around 2,000 rupiahs per citizens to pay to the government for street lamp, public lighting. The next one is 2B, which is now starting to popular in Indonesia, and now we are engaging with other cities to implement these models. So government actually have lands in a city, have some properties in the city. So they actually rent that land to a private sector. See, they made a license to the private sector, and the private sector will deploy smart city solutions, which has some benefits to the citizens. And this private sector can rent another services to another private sectors. So therefore, the private sector will get the benefit from other business there, whereas the government no need to invest or pay some amount of money to the private sector. So this is a very, very fast, and I think it's really comply with the other existing regulations. So I'll tell you about the models, which is now we are creating the name of the microcell here, whereas the tower here, small tower, has solar cell energy, LED lighting, panic button, advertising, CCTV, speaker, alarm, and also some hotspot or Wi-Fi, internet. So government doesn't need to invest on these microcells. Instead, the private sector will invest and deploy these microcells. And then telco will rent this space to some advertising company, so they get the revenue from the advertising company. So this is the latest models that we finally use for a PPP in Indonesia. And this is the case that I explained here as an experience that we deploy in Jakarta. So we deploy around 2,400 microcells. Jakarta itself has around 664 kilometers squares. And this is the models of the microcells that we deploy. It has a Wi-Fi, it has a CCTV. The microcell itself has accommodated 2 to 4 mobile operators. Has also street smart lighting and also fiber optic. So this model is really adoptable in Indonesia. As latest informations, I would say that this PPP model requires strong will from the government and also requires very high political will from the mayor and the governor. This is the last information that I would like to share about Bandung, where we deploy also some command center, some CCTV in the small scales. And then this is a panic button we have, where people can install a software of panic button in the smartphone, and if there's something happen, they just press the button there. And some apps, this is also what Telecom contribute for the smart city. So I think that's all for my presentation. Thank you very much. If you have any questions, please. Thank you.
Well, that was really interesting presentations, and you could see we have talked a lot of different things. Starting with, I think that everybody is willing to go to Tokyo to do business, or at least to live there. And we have talked about risk and the need of sharing the risk between the public and the private sector as a key of the success of private sector investing in the projects that the public sector is promoting. And finally, we had 2 examples of how how PPP models, new models, can be developed in the cities. So we are running out of time, because I think there was like a lack of coordination between the signals and the clock, because it says the clock here, it says 15 minutes for the presentation, but it says I think there's some problem. But I think we have time for 1 question or 2 maximum. Is there anybody to raise any questions? Yes, it's one.
Thanks, Eva, for hosting the whole thing. Hi. I'm Anush Mehta from the Asian Development Bank. Very quick question to the 2 private sector guys over here from Cisco and Siemens. I mean, if you guys are going to be endorsing a lot of PPP projects, especially in countries like Indonesia, would you be, as part of the consortium, be willing to take financing and demand risk? Simple. Thanks.
He's going to go first. It's easy for him.
Well, it's easy to say, I don't know. It's easy to say, it depends on the circumstances. I mean, financing risk, yes, absolutely. We put our money where our mouth is. We want to have skin in the game, but we want to get paid for it. From a private sector perspective, if you sell a turbine that has an output of, say, 120 megawatt, and you deliver a turbine that, given circumstances, is delivering 130, you will get a thank you from your customer, but nothing more. In these kinds of situations, if you overperform technically or in other ways, then you have a share in the upside. So what we talk about is we want to share the risk, but also the upside. And this is why I think there the private sector can make a contribution for the benefit of all. Demand risk is difficult in the sense that, do we have enough insight into how this demand might change? Generally, we would say that's a public sector risk, because if the people come through this bridge or use this device and there's competing devices, this is not something that we can, as a private sector company, regularly influence. In some exceptional cases, we might have a look at it. That's the art of crafting a good tender. If you push the demand risk on the private sector, and the private sector then has to attach a huge risk premium to that, then you are overpaying on your own risk. So why, if I'm the government, and if I am controlling the demand risk, why do I have someone who doesn't control the demand risk take this risk and charge for it if it comes back to me anyway? So there I think it's more efficient for the government to take this risk, but again, this depends on circumstances.
Great. I think I agree with all the points here. I think a lot of them apply. I do want to make two distinctions. One is Siemens is involved in the overall infrastructure. Cisco is involved in part of it, right? So if you're looking at a lighting contract, it's very difficult for Cisco to take demand and performance risk when they're not managing the lighting network itself. We're managing the infrastructure from a technology standpoint. We're enabling other elements, the data portion, et cetera. And that's the reason when we look at consortiums, we're working with companies like Siemens and others who are on the front lines that actually do the physical infrastructure. The second point around financing, absolutely. We have a huge capital leasing arm, but that's for Cisco equipment. When we look at these type of solutions, we realize there's third party as well as technology. And that's part of the reason why we're spending a lot of time with sovereign wealth funds, with infrastructure funds, pension funds, trying to figure out how to bring more of that pools of capital to play in these solutions.
Thank you. Only one question more. Is you? Here, if you can go there, or maybe we can give you this. It really is here.
Jerry Halton from New York City. If you had one thing that would really improve public-private partnership coming out in the next 2 or 3 years, what would you focus on? What's, in your view, the missing link or the key element that governments need to pay attention to?
It's the tender design in my mind, to make it reusable. Standardize the risks, stop the lawyers from defining each risk differently every time, and go from tailor-made to a kind of standardized solutions.
I would say increase citizen participation, enhance their stake in the project. And if you do that, there's a higher chance of this project succeeding.
I would say one of the key things is the government needs to have skin in the game, which is realistic. We see a number of tenders where when it comes to private party, if a lot of that financing and the execution is on behalf of private party, we've got to be in the business of making money in order to make these projects sustainable. And especially, I speak much more for the digital infrastructure. A lot of this is new, and I think the thing that I would like to see is more realistic RFPs and more realistic business models, because that way we can all win, right?
Yes, all the panels I strongly agree. I just made some additions that the upcoming challenge that needs to be improved is this political will and a long time commitment from the government itself. Thank you.
Well, thank you to all of you for being here, and please join to give a round of applause to the panelists, please.